Welcome to the Tag Talks podcast. Today, I am joined by legendary high school track and field coach, Coach Tony Holler. Coach, thank you so much for being here today. Do you want to just start everyone off with a little bit about you, where you're from, where you work, what positions you hold, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm 61 years old. I'm a retired chemistry teacher, 38 years in the classroom, something that I'm really proud of that I did, an actual academic class as a teacher. And I think that kept me grounded. Coaching has always been a part of my life. I say I was born a coach's kid, which is true. My dad was a head varsity basketball coach at the age of 23 when I was born. And, that experience of being my dad's oldest son and going through everything with him. I was kind of his wingman. He coached for 47 years, 44 as a head coach at both the high school and college level. He went through everything. He was fired twice. He was he's in 3 Hall of Fames. So, he went through everything. I saw him after losses, just, taking it personally, demoralized, and nothing that I saw dampened my idea of coaching. I mean, I went to college in pre-med, because I was smart and sciencey and all that kind of stuff. But it didn't take me long to realize that I was just kidding myself. That coaching is my calling, and I think we'll get into Feed the Cats later. But Feed the Cats has really kept me young, and I'm going into my 40th year of coaching right now, and I love it more than I ever have. And I think that's a tribute to the less is more type of attitude that I have, the essentialist attitude I have about Feed the Cats.
That's amazing, Coach. 40 years of coaching. Like, first off, just hats off to you. You've obviously had a great impact on a ton of athletes' lives. And that is just truly outstanding. As someone who's in year 5 of coaching full time, it's pretty crazy to think that to get to your level, I got to put in another 35 years. So first off, just hats off on that. And you kind of talked about it there being the son of a coach. But when did you truly know that you wanted to be a coach? And how was that transition of going from athlete into coaching?
I think I really believe that I always knew deep down, that when I told people, I'm going to be a doctor, that I was doing what I thought I should do and not what I wanted to do. But I was basketball was probably my main sport in high school and college, and I had I actually got cut from the varsity team as a sophomore, and I shouldn't have been cut. It's a long story, but anyway, the fact that I sat out my sophomore year, I refused to play JV at the school that I was at, and when I did not play that season, I realized then that it was a part of me, that I was not going to go another year without sports in my life. And I went ahead and ran track that year. And so every single year that I've lived, I've been in sports, and there's just so much emotion and so many experiences and memories and the love relationships that you have, with other coaches, with your players towards you. Those things I don't think you can, I know you can't get in the chemistry classroom. And I don't think you can get it really anywhere else. And I think that's what people like you and I are addicted to, is the emotion of the game and the memories. And, we can sit down and talk. Now, you and I have never met, but we could talk for 3 hours because we have this common bond of sport.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, it sounds like taking that year off was extremely influential for you. And obviously you can't go back and change that. But what was your motivation for taking that year off and not playing JV?
Well, it was a crazy situation. It was a Division III school. I absolutely loved the head coach. And in the school I went to, it was Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois. And it was weird that he just put all the freshmen with the JV the first year. He was like old school. It used to be in the NCAA even, like Lou Alcindor had to play on the JV team as a freshman. And, it was that whole idea that freshmen did not need to be competing in varsity athletics because they need to get, become a student first. So there'd be this abbreviated JV schedule. So I went through all that crap my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I just believed I was the 7th or 8th best player on the team. And the head coach actually told me I was the 7th or 8th best player, but he thought that I would not be happy with a secondary role on the team. And I told him, I guess you're right. I would have competed like hell every damn day for a starting spot. And he goes, I know you would have. And I don't know if that's really good for the team, blah, blah, blah. So he actually kept a couple players that didn't even play on their high school basketball team because they were really good guys. And he truly believed that love relationships among basketball players is what wins games. And he just didn't think that I would fit in real well. And it's a weird thing to admit, but he's probably right. I would not have been real happy in a non-playing role. And that's just who I am. But to this day, I love the man. I still think he made the wrong decision. And so for me to play 10 games again, my sophomore year, just 10, JV, was just, no, I'm better than that. So I put all my interest into track, and track has always been, this stepchild in my sporting life. But I've always fallen back into track. I started off as a head basketball coach for 8 years, and I got fired in 1990. And that same year I was hired as the head track coach. So I went from what I loved to what I really didn't love, but sometimes we just grow where you're planted, and track has always kind of ended up being where I was planted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like without being too corny or philosophical here, it just almost looks like in both as an athlete and a coach, it seems like the universe has really wanted to push you towards the track world.
It has. Right? And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I do think that those things are important for young coaches to hear.
Yeah. Well, you say you don't know if it's good or bad. And, I can personally say that I think it's a good thing because you've had a huge impact in the track world. And then all of that you've done in the track world, now we're starting to see through the Track Football Consortium and all the podcasts and all the writings that you do, that's starting to transcend the track world and trickle into the strength conditioning and the sports performance world. I know you've had a huge impact there. So I would personally say, as a biased opinion, but I would say it's a great thing, not only for the track world, but for the industry as a whole.
Well, thank you. I'm at a very good time in my life right now. I get to do a lot of these things. I love to present. I traveled like crazy before COVID hit. And so I'm in a good place right now at my age.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a perfect segue into talking to, for anyone watching the video version of this, you can see over Tony's left shoulder is the Feed the Cats little poster he's got there. And I think this is what's really helped you transcend that is the message that you've delivered through the Feed the Cat system. So why don't you talk to those that don't know what Feed the Cats is and how you came about that training philosophy?
Yeah, it's a weird story because I grew up probably like all of us did, where sports were hard. Coaches tried to make us tough. We were overworked. We were pushed beyond our limits, all those things. And so that's the way I coached for 17 years, football, basketball, and track. I'd say dumb things like, nobody's going to work harder than us. And like only the strong survive, and get your ass up, we're going to do 3 more of them, and so I was that kind of coach. In 1999, 21 years ago, everything changed because my son, who was a terrific 8th grade athlete who could dunk a basketball, told me he's going to play baseball in high school. And I was like, what are you? You're my son, like, I'm a great track coach, Alec. And he goes, track sucks, Dad. And that kind of changed my whole life right there. I I've been on a 21-year mission to make track unsuck. And to do that, what I did was said, we are going to focus on sprinting and not running. That I used to make the joke that my kids used to come out for practice and say, Coach, do we have to run today? And I'd say, hell yeah, we're going to run. What do you think this is? This is track. And so I told the kids from then on, we're never going to run ever again. We're going to sprint. And we're going to sprint for very short durations. And you're going to go home feeling good every night. That's partially a lie during the season because there are times when you have to sprint farther. But my guys have never run a lap in 21 years. My sprinters have never run more than a 200 in the last 21 years, and that includes my 400-meter runners. And so the whole idea was to make track attractive to great athletes. I wanted, the skilled players in football, those wide receivers. I wanted those dunkers in basketball to want to be on my track team. And it worked. I started attracting the cats of the world. What surprised me, and I'm learning this still every day, is that it wasn't just attracting talent that made us great. It was the fact that what we did actually improved even my lesser guys. My slow freshmen all got faster. And because they liked track, they came out as sophomores and they got faster again. And so we started to take generic guys and make them into maybe not elites, but really solid guys. I mean, for people to think that Feed the Cats only works for elite athletes, they're just flat wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. And so we just built on that. And of course, as you said earlier, the whole Feed the Cats thing is now starting to bleed into other sports, and that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. So I'm as I stated before we got on this podcast, and as I've kind of mentioned a little bit throughout, like I'm a big fan of the Feed the Cat system, and it's been super influential for me as a young coach as I'm trying to learn everything that goes into helping athletes perform at a high level. What are the constituent parts of the Feed the Cat system for those that don't know? And I'd love for you to really break it down, because I think, some of the misconceptions that I've kind of seen some people make is they think, oh, if I'm just doing low volume sprint program, I'm feeding the cats. And I personally don't think that to be true. And I'm sure you wouldn't agree wholeheartedly with that either. So why don't you walk us through exactly what Feed the Cats is and what that looks like?
Well, it's basically, you are going to prioritize sprinting as your number one thing. That whether you're talking about basketball, football, lacrosse, whatever, your entire athletic training, besides the skills required to play that sport, will become how fast can your body sprint. And so it's like your entire off season is the pursuit of miles per hour. And we measure miles per hour indirectly. What we do is we run 10-meter flies or 10-yard flies or 20-yard flies, whatever distance. If you know how fast you can run a certain distance, you can convert that into miles per hour. So I would say that's the first thing, is that we are going to focus on the most extreme thing that the body can do. And that is, without a doubt, sprinting as fast as you can do. I mean, that's the most extreme. And I say that when you train the extreme, you train the entire range. So the faster you are, the better you are at applying force into the ground, the better you're going to get at agility, the better you're going to get at running backwards, the better you're going to get in the weight room, because everything we do is central nervous system driven. And so if that's the case, let's do the most extreme central nervous system thing we can do, which is sprinting. So yes, it is a sprint-based program. And if you're not in a sprint-based program, you can say, well, like I say, I fed the cats in chemistry. Obviously, we were not sprinting and chemistry. But what you can do is prioritize the most important stuff and go big on it. And that's part of Feed the Cats. There's several slogans that I've developed. One is do less, achieve more. And that rubs people the wrong way because we've grown up in a more society. Hard work gets you everywhere. And so that's very difficult for people. But I explain it like this. The Los Angeles Dodgers set all their hitting records last year. And they did not do it by doing more work. They actually limited their time in the batting cage. And if you think about that, if you get 30 swings instead of 100, what happens to those 30 swings? Up,
Exactly.
Intensity, quality. And so one of the things we do is that we try to practice. Our sprint workouts are about 45 minutes. We never want to let today ruin tomorrow. So we're saying we never want to burn the steak. Now, sometimes we will work very, very hard, like an in-season lactate workout where our kids are hurting pretty bad by the end of the workout, but we don't practice the next day. So you could add to that statement, never let today's workout ruin tomorrow's workout. So that's one of the things we say, that tired is the enemy, not the goal. When I look back at every practice I ever had, if you take out pre-game practices, if you take out that Thursday practice before a Friday football game, or that day before a big basketball game, when we did back off, every other practice, basically the coach wanted to drain our tank. They wanted to just, I think there's a quote out there that toughness is finding energy when there's nothing left in your tank, or something like that. And I think our coaches constantly had tired is the goal, instead of the way I do it. I've just flipped it and said that tired is the enemy. When you start thinking like that, you will start to prioritize performance in practice. And I think that's a major paradigm shift as well, that most teams do not perform in practice. It is toiling. They are in a constant state of fatigue. The worst thing that every great football coach does out there is they run in between drills. They want this masterpiece of movement happening in a football practice when the average drive lasts only 6 plays. Mm-hmm. That there's a 6-to-1 work to rest ratio. Even when you are out on the field, is that NFL broadcast, besides the 100 commercials, take those 100 commercials out, they literally have 100 commercials in one game. If you take all those out, they are still televising more instant replay than actual replay. And there's 75 minutes of televised players and coaches standing around in an NFL football game. So it just bothers me that we practice football in a constant state of fatigue when that is not specific to what we do in the games. That we need to perform in practice, which will require that rest, recovery, and sleep. That's another one of our slogans: rest, recovery, and sleep. The only 2 ways to get dopamine levels up, which we should want in all of our athletes, is a lot of sunshine and a lot of sleep. And in places like you are and I am, sunshine is not, half the year there's no sunshine. Yeah. So we better be prioritizing sleep. We say that cats sleep 20 hours a day. Once again, it all works into this performance-based model of Feed the Cats.
I love it. And there's so much gold there with that you just said there, that I think, like you said, is paradigm shifting for a lot of coaches. And there is that, especially in football. And that's where I've spent most of my time in my athletic world. But there is this, and I hate the word, but this grind culture in football. And I think of it like this, I guess, as I've starting to get, starting to think about things more as from a coaching perspective, and then how that's interpreted as an athlete. When you're trying to cram in as much as possible, and it's like this grind, like it's coming from almost a place of fear, right? Because you're
I
thinking,
think so.
oh, we haven't done enough. We need to do more. We need to do more. And your players will pick up on that. Like I remember going into big games as an athlete, our coach would say, oh, we're going to grind you guys down and absolutely kill you this week in practice so that we're ready for Saturday. And it's like that's a fearful message. Whereas opposed to feed the cats philosophy, less is more, it comes off as confident, right? We believe in what we can do. We're going to perform in practice and we're going to just do a little bit because we know that's enough for you guys to go out and do what needs to be done on game day. So I think just in how athletes interpret that message, it makes a huge difference, I think.
It does. Eric Corum, a good friend of mine and Track Football Consortium guy, he said over the summer, he said, football coaches are going to need to be uncomfortable with how little they do in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that and ran with it. I say football coaches need to be uncomfortable every week during the football season because like you say, football coaches are insecure. And if they're not working their guys hard enough, they lose sleep at night. And I had a coach ask me, say, how will I know if I gave them the right dosage? I said, well, bring your team together at the end. No conditioning at the end. We don't do that in Feed the Cats, no conditioning. And ask your team if they have more in them. And if they all raise their hand, you know you were just right. But you and I both know that if everybody raises their hand, the coach is going to feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Like I could have got more out of them.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they're going to come back better tomorrow. And here's the big thing. If you leave them feeling like they have more in them, they will feel tougher. You don't want athletes to fail. You want them to gain confidence. And once they do that, they will start looking forward to practice. And the reason why Feed the Cats has become this like cult-like thing in the coaching world is that when coaches go and to practice and they see kids looking forward to practice and loving practice, they become inspired themselves. When coaches are,
it's contagious.
I call it an endless feedback loop where when the kids are enthusiastic and raring to go, it inspires us and makes us a better coach. And then they become better players. And then they even give us more inspiration. And that endless feedback loop is just beautiful. And it's so addicting because these coaches that coach the old school way, where kids did not like practice and you fought the kids every day, those guys who start to feel this love and inspiration on a daily basis, it's you fall in love with it. And so when people act like, you know, it's changed their life and stuff, it really might have, because they have never had that, you know, basically we went through hell all week to get to play in the games. That's players and coaches.
So true. And something I just want to kind of cycle back on just for a quick second. So you're talking about, you know, bring the team together at the end of practice, raise your hand if you still got something in the tank. It's not just the coaches that freak out when that happens, especially in the football world. The athletes themselves kind of freak out because they've been indoctrinated into this work culture their whole life. So one of the uphill battles that I'm fighting right now, and hopefully some of my athletes over there listen to this, but is that they're freaking out because they go like, coach, what's with all this rest, man? Like what's like, they're like, we first did our sprint session over at the university, and these guys, I'm like, guys, we got 5 minutes rest in between. And they're like, five minutes, like what the heck, like why? And you're trying to, like, you know, it's like it's a constant battle to teach them, because they start getting fearful, like, are we doing enough? And I have guys that are coming up after me, we might do 3 to 6 reps of sprints, and we can talk more about this in a minute, but we might do 3 to 6 reps. And when I say we're done, I got guys begging to do extra. Coach, can I just, let me have 1 more, let me have 2 more. It's like, dude, no. Why? And you question that, and well, because I feel like I haven't done enough. And then you say, you know, maybe I steal a few lines from you, but it's, hey, it's about not letting today ruin tomorrow, or, you know, so you got football practice tomorrow, so Why are we going to try and just work until you got nothing left today? So that's been one of those things. Is it's not just the coaches that you have to get into this less is more style of thinking. It's also the athletes, because they start to get really fearful. But once you can show them, and this will be a little segue into record, rank, publish, but once you can show them the proof in the pudding of what you're doing, all of a sudden it's this massive paradigm shift for them.
You're so correct. I think it's really, the grind is the religion of football.
Oh, it is, man. Oh, it is.
and it is, like all religions, kids are taught the religion before they even know what they're doing. And so that's what we've done to football players. And so it is, you have to be a charismatic coach in order to implement these simple ideas. And no matter what you do, you have to win your audience. And so that's all just the talent of and the art of coaching. But you mentioned that 5 minutes, we if no matter what the age of the kid, if they sprint a 10-meter fly or a 40-yard dash, that's about a 5-second all out effort. And so we say for every second of all out, you need a full minute to go full recovery. Mm-hmm. So we go 5 minutes between 40s, for example, like you do. And the great story from my friend Brian Kula, who trains Christian McCaffrey in the off season. There's a couple huge takeaways here. One is that when the article came out, it's a Stack article, if you want to look it up. It's just a beautiful article. I read it 3 times and I was so excited because I was like, Brian Kula has read all my shit. He has read my stuff. He is feeding the cats, and his cat is McCaffrey, like the best cat in the world. And so I called Brian Kula, and he said, no, I've never heard of you. And he goes, feed the cats, what's that? So he had evolved, like somehow 2 animals on 2 different continents can evolve into the same type of animal. Mm-hmm. Well, we evolved into the same type of coach without ever sharing our ideas. So we were instant friends. And basically McCaffrey trained with nothing more than 5-second doses of intensity. And there's 2 things I want to mention about this. One is they totally ignored endurance training all summer, in spite of the fact that he had a grueling conditioning test to do on the first day at camp for the Carolina Panthers. So you would think, okay, I kind of understand that. We're going to go strength and speed and explosion and elasticity and all that stuff. But he is going to probably fail the endurance test. Well, he won it. He won the endurance test without conditioning for the conditioning test, which is just brilliant. And what I always say is, yeah, by crowding together anaerobic work, we can get in shape. And then Brian tells me, he goes, I call it stacking. We stack together anaerobic work to get into shape. And so it is counterintuitive, but yes, you can become aerobically fit without doing aerobically focused work. And that's important because that frees us to work on the things that matter. And when we, anytime we focus on aerobic conditioning, we are missing a day of speed training and maybe even counteracting the speed gains that we have created the previous days. So no, we just totally forsake that aerobic stuff. And then the other point I was going to make, to talk about 5 minutes, the main thing they do with McCaffrey, they do Barry Ross training, which if there is a feed the cats in the weight room, it is Barry Ross. The book is called Underground Secrets. It costs about $50 on Amazon, but you can get the ebook off of Apple for about 10 or 11. Barry Ross trained Allison Felix, the world record holding girl sprinter. And the core of Barry's program is the deadlift, and it's concentric only. 3 reps, heavy weight, lift and drop, lift and drop, lift and drop. And then they superset it with some type of plyo pogo jumps or hurdle hops or something like that. Just one dose. But here's the key. Then Christian has to go sit on a bench in the weight room for 5 minutes. And like you say, you can pretty much imagine what Christian's response to that would be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's pissed. He's like looking at his watch. He's like, come on, coach, let's do another one. Nope, sit right there. And when I tell this to people, like I remote train a couple kids and I tell them that, and they said, coach, if we ever sat down in the weight room, we could get kicked out.
Yep.
And so once again, we're just pointing out this totally different way of doing things.
Yeah. Coach, so much there that I'm going to read that article. I actually haven't read that article that you referenced from Coach Kula. I'll read that and I'll link that in. And then I'm going to be checking out what you just talked about from Barry Ross. And I'm going to link that in the show notes as well for anyone that's interested.
There was actually 2 or 3 articles written by, I think the guy's name was Brandon Hall. But it was, online at Stack. They did a couple articles with me too. But it's brilliant.
I'll get searching away. I'll find it all and I'll link it in there. So anyone listening, check the show notes if you want to find any of these resources that Coach just mentioned. So there's so much there that I kind of want to talk about, and I'm making notes here as we're going along. But some of them I might just throw on the back burner there for us to talk about later, some of the conditioning things and maybe some of the stacking of anaerobic work and that kind of stuff that you mentioned there. What I really want to talk about now is something that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, something that I see as a kind of key component of the Feed the Cats, which is record, rank, and publish. So do you see that as a integral piece of running a Feed the Cat system? Like if you aren't record, ranking, and publish, would you say that someone's not feeding the cats?
Right. I would even probably say meaner things to them, I like to say that if you don't record, rank, and publish, you don't know where you've been and you don't know where you're going. It is so important for me to show kids when they're sophomores and juniors what they were doing in the same things as freshmen. It is motivational. It is, and it's not just the data that's important. It's also when I often say that another slogan here, that if you're not spiked up, you're not being timed, your times are not being recorded, they're not being ranked, and they're not being published, then you're not sprinting. That what happens is, if you are not measuring what you're doing, you're probably just running. And one of the things that I say often, matter of fact, I did a tweet about this today about observation, that Heisenberg said that in his uncertainty principle, he said that when we observe things, we change the observed. Like, for example, if I'm teaching a class and you came in to watch me teach, I would not be the same teacher. That the act of being observed changes what we do. If I go and observe mountain gorillas, they may not act the way they do normally because I'm around. Yeah. Well, coaches know that as well. If you're not in the weight room, your kids may not lift the same. Well, there's a couple other things we can do besides just watching them closely, though. We can measure what they do. When we measure what they do, we will change what they do. And then the other thing is probably the most, like observation on steroids is video.
Yeah.
Sometimes I pretend to video my guys doing drills just to make them do them better, because they will do them better if they think they're being closely watched and videoed. So we can use all of those things as tools. So one of the things with the record, rank, and publish, and I have to give credit where credit is due, that what coincided with the start of Feed the Cats, strangely, was a program that a lot of people make fun of now, which is Bigger, Faster, Stronger. Bigger, Faster, Stronger recorded everything, and they tried to break records. I mean, they would record a 3-rep set. They would record a 5-rep set. They would do all these different things, and then they would break records every week. And so I started doing that in the weight room and on the track. And so all that stuff, and of course, I'm a spreadsheet guy too. I was doing spreadsheets before most people knew what they were. And so I used those to rank people. Before the internet, I used to tape stuff up on the wall. And I noticed that kids were just drawn to the rankings. They were just drawn to them. They wanted to know where they were. And so it all became this record, rank, and publish idea. My friend Brad Dixon says that if you're not record, ranking, and publishing, then you're coaching in the dark. You don't really know what you're accomplishing. And one thing that I need to mention, though, is that I'm not real sure what we should be measuring in the weight room.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying, Coach, and I'm on a quest to try and figure that out myself. But I owe a lot of that to you too, because what record, rank, and publish does is it makes you objectively think about everything you're doing, because that data is right there in front of you, right? And
Yes.
with the weight room, starting to look at the weight room through a record, rank, and publish lens, it's really made me think, because once whatever you've said this before, whatever you record, that's what becomes important to those athletes, right? Because they are obsessed with it. So if you're going to bring record, rank, and publish into the weight room, you better be damn sure of what you're measuring and what you're recording and ranking, because they're going to obsess over it. So if you pick the wrong thing, man, that could come and bite you in the ass.
Well, both of us, well, you may not be old enough, but back in the early days of lifting, and lifting's not that old. I mean, Nebraska had their first S&C guy back in the late 60s.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking, it's 52, 53 years old totally. And so, and the first guy was a posing Boyd Epley was a poser, he was, Mr. Universe type guy. Yes. And so it's relatively new. And in the 70s, coaches started having bench press clubs, because the bench press was probably the most measurable lift in the weight room, and you couldn't cheat on it. So even though it drew a lot of interest, t-shirts and the board up there and everything, what coaches eventually figured out was, we've sure drawn a lot of interest in this lift, but this is one of the most unathletic lifts in the world.
Yep.
So you have to decide. Like, a couple of things I did in the weight room were dips and pull-ups. We would do 3 sets of pull-ups, as much rest as you needed, and you would count how many pull-ups you could do, and you would add them all together, and that was your thing for the day. I love pull-ups. And we did dips. Those are 2 things that were easy to measure. We had, this is what you had to do, and then I think in high school that you can get away with record, rank, and publish in the weight room a lot more, as long as you're not doing single rep maxes. I think single rep really encourages bad habits. You don't want somebody squatting 100 pounds more than they should, with the bad form. You really have to make some like what matters. Like I would never question somebody measuring how high somebody can vertically jump, how far they, the standing long jump. We measure 6 bounds. I love 6 bounds. We measure single leg bounds, single leg bound, you're going to do from a 2-footed start, you're going to bound on one leg 6 times, and we're going to measure how far you go. Well, first thing I'm going to tell you is they'll go 5 feet further if you measure it.
Yep.
And if you measure it and video it, they may go 10 feet further, which once again, but nobody would argue that jumping and explosive stuff and speed, like nobody could ever be too fast. So speed's a great thing to measure, and we want infinite speed. I always say that one of the things in the weight room is that we don't want infinite strength, because infinite strength interferes with speed, interferes with movement. And so, yeah, that I just think that I'm confused at what we should record, rank, and publish in the weight room.
Oh, for sure. And I will just be super honest about this. I didn't call it record, rank, and publish, but my first job at the university, like you said, they had the bench press club. I had a low budget. I didn't have a ton to work with. I went and got five pieces of Bristol board, and I had a trap bar. I had a bench. I had a squat. I had a pull up, and I had I can't remember what the fifth one was, but and it was just a board. And once you hit it, you can go write your name on the board. And it was, I look back on it, you know what? Like that one was a little bit of a flop because so many of the guys, all they cared about was, and they didn't, let me tell you, they didn't care as much about the chin up board. They cared about the squat, the bench, and the deadlift board. Yeah. And that was one of those things at that point in time, I was a very green coach. That was my first full-time job. That was me, in the first 6 months of me coaching. So there's obviously lots of mistakes, but in hindsight, looking back on it, it's like, yeah, dang, I was fueling the fire, but not the right one, if you know what I'm saying back then. So now, now as I've learned and matured a bit as a coach, I want to bring record, rank, and publish back to the weight room, but I'm okay with doing it a little slower and being sure of what I'm measuring, because everyone's heard that quote, what gets measured gets managed. We've all heard that one. Well, in the record, rank, and publish world, what gets measured becomes super freaking important to the athletes. So, so let's make sure we're choosing the right one as coaches. And a few things, right? Like you said, like the jumps, the speed, the throws, like you could make those record, rank, and publish. Yep. Do no harm, right? You're really not doing any harm if that's what you're record, rank, and publishing. As we start to introduce more of our traditional weight room kind of stuff, that's where, I'm sure you would suggest people be a little more selective and hesitant on how they're going to implement that. And that's currently the process that I'm going through myself. And a few things here, I do want to, here in a second, I do want to kind of dive in more on talking more on the track and the sprint world real quick. I got a handful of questions there for you. And then I want to move towards maybe like feed the cats football and how that might tweak. But one of the things you mentioned there, and I just think this is really cool because this is something that I've experienced over the last year. You're talking about videoing reps and how the second you get that camera out, things change. And what I've noticed is sometimes, you see an elevation, but sometimes you also see a dip. And what getting that camera out can really do is that can spark some really good conversations. So I know I got 4 athletes. The second I get the camera out, I can guarantee you their first rep is going down. I know who they are. I got 4 of them because now all of a sudden they're so in their head about, oh my God, the camera's out. But
are they like that in the game?
And that's exactly that's what this has sparked is a conversation where I've pulled them aside and said, hey man, do you notice how that first time I get that camera out, your rep, your time, whatever it is, it goes down. Do you think that you're doing that same thing in the game when the lights are on, that first series, that first quarter, right? Are you so nervous about the pressure and the stakes that you're underperforming? And, oh yeah, coach, you know what? I do start slow. I do this. And it's like, well, now this is a great opportunity. Every time I get this camera out, this is a great opportunity for you to train the skill of just getting out of your head and just playing and not being so focused that the camera's there or all this. So it's actually been, a really cool coaching tool for me to actually spark some great conversations.
If you think about it, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here that this whole idea that we're going to start performing in practice. Well, what if you were an old school program that never performed in practice? You just worked hard, high effort, hard work. It's very possible that when those guys get out and say, flip the switch, I'm going to perform now, they do get nervous. And the more we perform, the more game-like, more competition-like our practices are, the more meaningful our practices are, the better we will perform when we're on the stage. And to me, that makes sense.
Yeah, to me it does too. And so just when you mentioned that and you were talking about how performances increase, that was the first thing I wanted to just get that out there, that I've actually seen for certain athletes, it's go the other way. And what that's really done is just been a really good spark for a great conversation with the athlete. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking too, you'll be interested in this. I created something about 12 years ago called the Gauntlet, where we line up our team and they just raise hell and clap as a guy runs through them. And I've done this twice a year for the last 12 years. And we will typically get between 60 and 65% PRs on those 2 days, which means those guys are running faster. Their nervous system is firing faster than it's ever fired in their life. And you think, oh, we can learn some stuff about that. You know, that when people feel supported and cheered for and happy and joyous, that hell, maybe we're faster when that happens. And so that's absolutely true. And I think my kids understand that. But another thing that we instituted a couple of years ago was one of our metrics is a 20-yard competition fly. And so I went in thinking that, hey, just like love and support and cheering will improve performance, I bet you that we normally do, that's the only thing we do in a competition. We always run solo, which by the way, I love because nobody loses.
Yep.
The slow guy is not getting beat, which is very good for that slow guy's speed development. He's only running against his former self. So the only thing we do in competition are these 20-yard competition flies. We have the free lap cones. 2 guys take off and they're running next to each other through those cones. So my hypothesis was, oh, hell, we're going to have a ton of PRs. First time we did it, we had none. That could it be that competition is not necessarily a performance enhancer? I mean, as coaches, we would think, hell yeah, competition is really important for performance. But what I've found is that even though I think it's really good that we do those competition flies once in a while, guys might be a little distracted thinking about the guy next to them instead of total focus on their own speed.
Love that. So earlier, so I got a few things, like, again, we're just talking out loud. This just popped into my head. So I'm going to say this first. It's interesting, right? You think this competition thing was going to you're going to have PRs everywhere.
Yep.
And you talked about it there. Maybe that competition isn't the performance enhancing drug that we think it is. But it's interesting, right? So you have this competition style 20-yard fly and you don't see any PRs, but then you have this gauntlet and you see PRs all over the place. It's like the difference between competition and support on performance. When you got your teammates there building you up, supporting you, we see PRs coming out the wahoo. And now when we get in this competitive environment and it's me versus you kind of thing, which again, I agree with you, it has its place, we don't see any PRs. So that's just something that popped into my head real quick that I thought was just interesting to hear you talk about there. The difference in my interpretation of that, the difference between competition and support and the influence that has on performance. But another thing, earlier I said, I hope some of my athletes at the university are listening to this. Well, now I changed my answer. I hope they're not, because I don't want to spoil the surprise for them. But our gauntlet fly 10s, that's going to be our last workout before the guys leave before Christmas break. I want to, I've heard you talk about it before. I thought it was super cool. There's another coach, I think he might be in the Chicago area, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Nelson. I started following him. I saw him even have a post last week about competition flies, and he was just like, it was PR. So that was
the video. How about the video of that? The excitement and the electricity.
Did you see? I don't know if it was him or a different coach, but the coach threw the iPad in the air. Like it just looked like a fun place to be.
Oh, it just, yes. And you have to visit something like that. I mean, the guys aren't just, like, go.
Oh yeah.
It's like legit. They're like trying to be loud and
it's legit. So yeah, so that I want to send our last week of training is the second week of December before the guys head home for Christmas break. So that last sprint workout, we're gonna do gauntlet fly 10s, and I'll follow up with you. I'll let you know how that changes the performance. But that was something that once I started mapping out the semester, I was like, you know what? We're going to send everyone home on a high note. We're going to go gauntlet fly 10s for our last sprint workout of the semester, and we'll see. It'll just be first off, I know it's going to be a ton of fun that session, but what I'm really hoping to see is everyone leaves for Christmas break with a PR time. Wouldn't that be cool?
A funny question I got one time. was, well, if it's so good, why don't you do that every day? And I was like, then it wouldn't have the effect.
Yeah, it's
It
not
would just be
special.
normal. It's
Not
not
special.
special. So, so it reminds us that even though we have to repeat the most important things, and we can never get bored ever with the repetition of our priorities, but we also have to keep things interesting. And so you can't keep pushing the same button or you don't get the same effect.
Yeah, it's going to lose its power.
Yeah.
So, like I said, let's talk a little more in the track world here, or in the sprint, just sprint overall, I guess, quick, and then we'll dive in on kind of Feed the Cats football and some of your thoughts. I got some questions for you on that too. So this is for whatever reason, a lot of coaches just get so obsessed about like silly little things, again, in my opinion. So sprint drills, for whatever reason, so became a very controversial topic. It seems like this year, where people are, sprint drills are the stupidest thing you've ever done, or a waste of time. And then you got other people that say this is magic, and you need to be doing sprint drills. So where do you sit on that spectrum, and why?
Yeah, I think our online world, and I'm not somebody. I mean, I love Twitter. I absolutely love Twitter. It's my entire business and my brand. That I didn't mean for it to be a brand, but all that stuff grew from Twitter. But the problem with Twitter is that there is so much contrarian stuff. It's almost like, you put out an idea, and there are people who are professional trolls that they just want to say everything that guy does is wrong, and their favorite guys to say that about are the guys with the biggest followings. And so with the growth of Feed the Cats, my number of people blocked or muted from my Twitter feed has grown substantially. Having said that, I think that drills, I'm a drill guy, and my business partner, Chris Korfist, is not. So I do think two different people can be right with, different viewpoints. I don't agree that every path leads to the top of the mountain. I don't believe that all roads lead to Rome. I think that, a lot of them go off of a cliff or something. I'm not a believer in saying that every coach should be respected for what they do, because I have seen so many god-awful coaches that need to be fired and maybe imprisoned or something, because it is malpractice every day, and those kids do not get a redo. And I had my own 4 kids go through horrible coaching situations that I will never forgive those guys for. So, having said those things, drills to me are just going through the motions if you are not specifically intense, and you are not. What I say to coaches who say we don't do drills, I say, when do you coach? I mean, that is my coaching segment. We do a 6-second drill, and I'm able to address my 40 guys about things that we need to be more focused on, things that the good guys are doing, things that the bad guys, the kids that are terrible at. And what I see is my freshmen come in and they all look like they've never had a physical education class, like they are horrible at everything that we try to do. And my guys that have been there for 4 years are really good. And the guys that are the best at them are the fastest guys. So when I say drills, yes, we do 3 different things where we're picking up our knee, and making sure our foot's out in front of our body. So yeah, those are more conventional like drills. But we also include in our drill segment, we do bounding, speed bounds and power bounds. We do hurdle hops that we call box jumps, where we are bouncing off the ground. So we intermix some plyometric stuff into that stuff. We do straight-legged bounds that we call prime times. And I've often said, and I've heard other coaches agree, that you can watch my team do what we call box jumps that are really like imaginary hurdle hops, basically trying to go as high and far as you can and bounce off the ground, bounce, bounce. And you can watch my team do that. And then you could probably predict my 4x1 team, because the 4 guys that can do that the best happen to be the fastest guys on most teams. So if that's the case, why aren't we working on that with our lesser runners? If the ability to bounce off the ground, single-legged, one-legged, the ability to bound well, the ability to, like when we do straight-legged bounds, we race. We go as fast as we can. Maximum intensity, maximum speed. If those things are things that really fast guys do well, that tells me that I want my lesser guys to do those better. And so it's a 4-year thing. It's repetitive as hell. I've done speed drills probably over 5,000 days in my life now. It's boring for me. I need caffeine to stay motivated during those repetitive times. But I do think they have a place, especially for coaching and teaching sprinting. Having said that, if you watch a soccer team do my speed drills before a game or something, it'll make you throw up, because they're basically just going through motions, talking as they do it, things like that. So obviously, if done poorly, in a sloppy fashion, speed drills are totally meaningless. And even though Chris Korfist says he doesn't do speed drills, he may do 4 consecutive prime times at top speed and says, okay, we're ready to run. And then they probably are, because that's a great drill. The only thing I would say is, like, don't you want at least a 15-minute segment where you're teaching, and talking, and that's just the time that I can coach my kids.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. That's pretty in line with how I feel about them as well. I had Coach Ryan Banta, who I know on earlier, I think episode number 13, I believe. And his answer to that question was essentially what you said there. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. If you're doing sprint drills well, they're going to help you. And if it's some bastardized version of sprint drills, then you ain't going to get jack shit from it.
Right.
So with that being said, you famously have stated that your sprint workouts are 45 minutes. And so your sprint drills, are they happening every day in your warm up, or what does a Feed the Cats warm up look like?
Yeah, I don't use the word warm up, because I think the thing that conjures up in my head is like doing things like slowly, and like the warm up is like doing things slowly so you can do things fast later. And so my stuff we call speed drills, but it's really more of a wake up. It's a blast of the CNS where we're doing things as fast or as intense as we possibly can. We're trying to wake up that CNS with kids that have been sitting in a desk for 7 hours all day long. And I've had the question, I think it needs to be addressed, that now if you don't warm up before speed drills, don't you see injuries? And in 21 years of basically, our speed drills have changed a little bit. It's constantly evolving, but I've never seen an injury in speed drills, not one time, 0. I've only seen, we just don't see injuries very often. And part of that's reflexive performance reset. RPR stuff's really important to us. But the other thing is that when you microdose and you never let today ruin tomorrow, and you never burn the steak, and tired's the enemy, not the goal, that you don't see as many injuries. I think I've seen maybe 3 hamstring situations in our full out 10-meter flies or 40s or whatever in 21 years. And none of those guys had gone through RPR, like the reset points and everything.
Yeah.
So the whole idea, I think there's so many people, if I was an S&C coach, I'd be scared to death, because, you get, your star wide receiver, pulling a hamstring, doing a sprint on the week of the big game, you'll be fired.
Yep.
And so you're afraid. And so here's what people do, and this is interesting, the pros especially. So you don't sprint all week because you're afraid of a hamstring injury. And then you play full speed in a game. And what happens in the game? pop it.
Gone.
It's gone. So all this fear of injury, and what I like to think of, and in the Feed the Cats football situation, coaches literally, I thought this was just a funky dream of mine, that instead of doing warm-ups, that we should do speed drills and a couple times sprints a couple times a week. I said football coaches will never do that, but that's just kind of a funky dream of mine. Well, people are actually doing that now.
Yeah.
And they're recording it, and they're finding out they're actually getting faster throughout the season, when most teams would get incredibly slow. Most teams would have been afraid to ever time anybody. First of all, thinking they'd get hurt. Secondly, they didn't want to know how slow they were.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea that we're going to sprint during the practice week in season in football actually inoculates people from hamstring injuries in games. And to me, that makes total sense.
And I got a good story for you on that front. And it's not my personal story. It's one I heard on a podcast, but I think you'll love this. Lauren Landau, I'm sure you know who that is. I believe it was on Lee Taft's podcast. So shout out to both of those guys. Tons of respect for both of those gentlemen. Lauren Landau was talking about, they had a guy on the Broncos, persistent hamstring issues his whole career. I think I put the pieces together. The guy actually used to play for Houston. I figured out who it was. He didn't say his name, but I figured out who it was because I know he had hamstring problems in Houston all the time. But anyways, they got GPS on all their players. They found same thing in the week. If they could get him above, and I can't remember what the number is, so I'm going to say 22. I'm just making a number up. They found if in the week they can get him above 22 miles per hour 2 times a week or what, something like that, he never had another hamstring injury. So his whole career, this guy had been nagged by hamstring injury his whole career. All of a sudden, they make sure it's a priority to get him over that twice a week or whatever the number was. No hamstring problems ever again. Like, yep. How great is that? For me, I think it was, I can't even remember when I listened to that podcast. Might have been a year ago, might have been 6 months ago. I can't remember. But when I heard that, I'm like, damn, that just makes so much sense. But how many coaches are too scared to do something like that? And I was like, you know what? Hats off to Coach Landau for kind of solving that problem.
And if you combine that with the RPR stuff, the belly breathing and I mean, you hit these 8 spots and all of a sudden your flexibility is improved without stretching. The combination of sprinting during the week, never burning the steak, never having a sore, beat up body, and then, having your body ready to perform like it was meant to perform after RPR. I think those things, basically, I mean, like Brad Dixon is a good friend of mine. He's a football coach. And in the last 2 years, I think they won 20, I think they're like 21-3 or something in the last 2 years. Terrific football teams, but they've had 0 soft tissue injuries. 0.
That's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And also 0 concussions. And that's totally RPR.
Yeah.
RPR is magically something that can keep the neck from snapping and the sloshing in the brain. And so it's great stuff. You don't have to have as many injuries as people have.
Yeah. And I actually am level 2 certified for RPR, and nice. It's I would say, and I don't want to dive into that too much, but I would say the biggest obstacle I've had, and it's 100% on me, is like getting that buy-in to RPR, because it is, what am I doing? Like, this is weird. You're telling me I got to rub this here and breathe, and this is going to fix something. And that's on me as a coach. I haven't, in the past, when I tried to implement it, the first time I tried to implement it, I sold that stuff like crazy, and the athletes ate that up and they loved it. And then I tried to implement it with another group, and I obviously didn't do a great job of communicating that. And they were, wow, this is just weird. And they didn't really, and then, so I've been hesitant. It's in the works in my plans with the university I'm working with now to get that involved, but I'm making sure that when I do go to bring it in, I'm going to do it right, because I know it has value. And I don't want to mess it up, because I have in the past. And I think if it has value, it's okay to take your time to implement it, to make sure it gets done right.
In a group setting, it's just so hard. For the first 6 years, and I was on the very ground floor of Be Activated, which turned into RPR.
Yeah.
And for the first 6 years, I did not teach it to the group. What I did is I just carried my table to track meets, and my best 8 sprinters were totally addicted to it and felt they were faster and they were healthier and mentally much more clear-headed going into a race. And they were, and we really excelled. But I was doing it to them because I didn't trust them doing it to themselves. Yeah. Well, last year was the first time I implemented it, and just quickly, what I did was I sold it in a 30-minute classroom situation, PowerPoint, and all the pros that were doing it, the reasons why we do it. I mean, like, I really taught it to them. And then I demonstrated it, to somebody and showed them the strength improvements, flexibility improvements. And then we institute, I'd say, can you give me 90 seconds of undivided attention? And we would hit every spot and breathe. It probably took double that, but I always said, can you give me 90 seconds? Because it sounded like not very much. And if I didn't see people's eyes on me or something, I would swear to God, I was going to kick their ass or send them home. So I made it into a big deal. But my point being, what I required from them, I just really condensed. Because if you don't, you're going to have a hard time getting buy-in, having them do it for 20 minutes.
100%. And I'm going to steal that, Coach. I'm going to do that classroom session. I'm stealing that unapologetically.
Yeah, steal it, man. Because I'm still learning how to do it too.
No, and that is great. And
hard.
I'll say for me, like I did in Naperville, I did the level 1 in December of 2017, I believe that's a couple years ago.
That's only 5 miles from me, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm shooting myself in the foot that I didn't reach out to you or Chris or any of the people in that, but I'm coming back. I swear I'm coming back to that area. Whenever COVID allows, I'm coming back to that area. I'm going to come see all you guys. I promise. I'm putting that out in the public. I don't know if you guys want to see, I don't know if you guys want to see me, but I'm coming your way and I'm going to try and bother you guys. But I will say, as an athlete, I was about a year out from my playing days. After we had lunch break, me and my buddy that I went and did the seminar with, we were doing bounds down the sidewalk because I hadn't felt so bouncy since my playing days were done. And all I did was breathe and touch the spots and do all that. And I guarantee you I had bounce that I hadn't had in years. And it was for me, I was like, oh, I don't know what is going on, but I'm curious. I'm diving more into this stuff because I haven't felt this way in a long, long time. And this feels good. And all I did was, like you said, took 90 seconds, hit a few spots, and now I'm bouncy again. Like, this is cool.
And even if it was just in your head.
And that's what I've said.
It's a good thing to be in your head.
Because I've had some people go, oh, you do that RPR stuff. Well, that's just hooey bullshit. And I go, maybe it is. But if it only takes a minute and a half, and it influences performance, whether it's placebo, nocebo, I don't care. If it influences performance and it takes a minute and a half and there's no risk to the athlete, tell me why I shouldn't do it. And that's kind of my stance, and that's what I'm working towards. But before we move on, like, thank you for that classroom idea. I'm stealing it unapologetically. That's what I'm going to do when I go to implement it with my university team that I'm working with right now. Okay. I've got this one for you here. So you've mentioned already here that you've been coaching for 40 years. And some people might say that the RPR is a trendy thing that's popular now, but I'm sure in your 40 years, you've seen lots of different trends in the training world, whether that's in the track world or in the weight room or what have you. In your opinion, what is the one truth that has stood the test of time?
I think it probably has something to do with the whole team thing. And, I look back at the coaches who I would strongly disagree with now, and they were still very successful because they were charismatic. They loved their players. And when you love your players, they tend to love you back. They were great communicators. Anytime, I think it goes back to, our 100,000 years of evolution as humans, where where especially as men, we were hunters, and we would sit around the campfire the night before the hunt, and we were a band of brothers, and it was teamwork that allowed us to be successful hunters. We weren't solo hunters, and and that and that urge to be on a team, I think, manifests itself in sports. I think it actually makes, war, something that men look forward to because of the whole teamwork and all that stuff. So yeah, I think there's just something glorious about entering a season, entering a hunt, talking about how good we could have it, our goals and our mission. I don't like goals. I'm a mission guy. You accomplish goals, you never accomplish a mission. It's your mission is what you wake up with every day, so I think that is what truly transcends everything that I've seen in athletics from the day I was born. My father was one of, like a depression baby, and parents worked around the clock. He was unsupervised. He was probably headed towards a very bad life, but he was lucky enough to have some skills. And his basketball coach, when he was an incoming freshman to Stephen Decatur High School, gave him a basketball and said, Holler, wear this thing out. You're going to be one of my great ones someday. And, you think about, that man changed that kid's life for the rest of his life. And I think that those kinds of relationships, and I think everybody, if you really think about it, it's the relationships that we love the most. Oh, sure, we like the wins. We love to see improvement. We love to banter and talk and do podcasts and all that stuff. But yeah, the relationships and the forever moments that we have. I have moments with kids I coached 40 years ago that we could sit down today and we would remember them vividly. My dad's 85, and he remembers how many points he scored in the first half against East St. Louis when he was a sophomore. Nothing else gives us those things. So I think that's what it is. We can continue to talk about what's the best way to perform well, but that's the truth.
So a few things. So if I were to summarize that, in your opinion, kind of that truth that stood the test of time is culture and environment influence performance more than we think. Is that a good way to summarize kind of what you just said?
Yes, or maybe that's why we're so passionate about games, about contests, that it's more than just, I say without those things, guys are just running in circles on the track. Or, like if you think about it, trying to throw a ball through a hoop is not exactly a magical thing.
No, it's pretty simple.
But basketball is magical. It is magical. And what makes it magical? It's the team stuff. It's getting knocked down and getting back up and being a band of brothers and all those kinds of things.
That's amazing. And then you said there, that coach gave your dad a basketball and said, hey, wear this thing out. And that was life changing for your dad. You think that, and maybe this isn't true, but you think that one moment there, imagine the butterfly effect that's had, it changed your dad's life, which influenced you to pursue coaching. Your influence on coaching, you've had effect on so many athletes, and now your son, I know Alec coaches. Two sons. So you got two sons coaching. That one, if we wanted to, be corny here for a second, that one motion of giving that kid that basketball and saying, wear this thing out, has had this massive ripple on thousands of lives over the test of time. And that's pretty cool.
It's even more than that. My dad's coach died the day before my first birthday. And so there's this weird connection. And not only did he die, but he died gloriously. He died on the bench during a game of a massive heart attack. This guy was a Hall of Famer, 3 state championships, all that stuff. But I think about what my dad must have felt going into his only son's first birthday with his own coach dying. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I never understood this until recently, but he always used to tell me that he wanted to die on the bench like his own coach did. So it is, I echo a guy that I never met. And we all have that power. And I don't think I had the same power in the chemistry classroom. But I think in sports we do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's personal stuff, but that's amazing. And it really shows the power of coaching. And it's a beautiful segue into this next question. You just teed it up for me. How has being a chemistry teacher influenced your sprint coaching and vice versa?
That's a really cool question because I came out of college to teach biology and coach basketball. And I ended up being a chemistry teacher and a track coach. And I don't know if you understand this, but I'm a numbers guy.
Oh, I know.
I
I don't even know you, coach, but I know that from all that I've read, I can know you're a numbers guy.
And like my wife will say, it's hotter than hell outside. And I'll say it's 98. And she'll say, this trip's taken forever. I'll say it's taken 3 hours and 15 minutes. So I'm a quantifier. I'm just, if I wouldn't have grown up with a basketball coach, I probably would have been an engineer. I'm just a project guy. I'm a numbers guy. And so it's not weird at all to me that I gravitated to the most quantitative science. Chemistry is not a memorization science. It's a math science. And then I also gravitate to the most quantified sport. I mean, if in track, if we didn't time or measure things, it wouldn't be a sport. So I think the numbers thing led me to where I am. And then overall in the classroom, I have to say that I mentioned earlier that I was a Feed the Cats teacher, which meant that we did not fill time. We didn't teach from bell to bell. There were certain priorities that I wanted to get done in class. And I did believe that we learn best from doing, and that the worst ways to learn is by listening and watching, which to me classes are nothing but listening and watching. So we did things often. We had priorities. If we could get that priority done in 20 minutes, we would go free for all, and we would talk about politics or pop culture or whatever. And the most important thing in my classroom was not the covering of the curriculum. It was instead the love of chemistry, because kids are good at what they love. No, they're awesome at what they love. And so if I could skip chapter 10 and by doing so make my kids like chemistry more, so that maybe they would want to be a pharmacist someday, or maybe be a chemistry major in college, I had done my job. I feel the same way about track. There are people that criticize Feed the Cats as not doing enough hard work. But if that hard work interferes with the love of sport that my kids feel, I would rather not work hard, because that love of sport, love what we're doing, is the key to a happy life. Good track athletes, good chemistry students, all that stuff.
Love that. And I think the thing when I first stumbled upon your work and Feed the Cats, the thing that I really gravitated towards initially, it wasn't necessarily the results. Those are great. Don't get me wrong. It was the fact that to me, the whole premise of Feeding the Cats was always putting the athlete first, right? It was, you came up with this whole system because you wanted to make track enjoyable. And for me, that was the first thing that stuck out. It was, a lot of times coaching is about us as coaches. A lot of people make it about themselves. And what I loved when I first stumbled upon your work and Feed the Cats was that you were making a conscious effort to put the athlete first and make it enjoyable. And you can hear that same kind of approach with your Feed the Cats teaching in chemistry, that you were truly trying to put the student first. And I think that's originally what grabbed me towards your work. And you can hear that passion and that prioritization of the individual in your philosophy. And that's what I truly latched onto at first.
Yeah, and it's not, and I have to defend it sometimes, that when I say practice is fun, we're not talking about grab ass fun,
Oh yeah.
or the chemistry is fun. We're not talking about, having parties in my classroom. We didn't have parties. We didn't, watch movies in my classroom. I'm not talking about that type of fun. Instead, what I'm talking about here is the type of fun where kids do not dread attending. And that's the first step. And then they actually say, chemistry is my best class, or the best part of my day is track practice. If we could get to that point, we're doing pretty good.
Yes, I agree. And I love that. As we're going to transition here into Feed the Cats football, if that still works for you, how are we doing for time
Sure.
here, Coach? You're
We're good.
We're good?
We're good.
So if I were to summarize my kind of interpretation of Feed the Cats as it pertains to track and field, these are some of the things that I think have to be involved. Speed is the number one priority.
Yep.
Record, rank, and publish. You got to do it. You got to wear spikes. You've got your X Factor days, and then in season you got your lactate days. That's for me, all the readings that I've done, all the podcasts that I've listened to, that's to me Feed the Cats, track and
That's
field.
for track. Yep.
Am I missing anything?
No, I think the lactate thing, we do no endurance, which probably needs to be said, and the entire off season is an unapologetic prioritization all we do is try to sprint as fast as we can and be as elastic and bouncy and explosive as we can. So we do no lactate work in the off season.
Yes. And I tried to make sure I put that in season only lactate work.
There you go.
I tried to say that. I hope I did. If I misspoke, then thank you for correcting me.
No, you're good.
Okay. So that's Feed the Cats track and field. I know you've done some Feed the Cats basketball and you've done some other different things. What, if any, changes need to be made for Feed the Cats football?
Great question. First of all, throw out lactate.
I agree.
There might
maybe once or twice a year, just in a certain spot, just to keep it groovy and exciting. That's my idea. But
if you want to see what your kids are made of, once in a while in the off season, you could do the 23-second drill. See how far they can run.
I want to do that one.
23 seconds and wait 8 to 10 minutes and do it again. But make sure you do it on Friday, when they don't have anything to do on Saturday and Sunday, because there's going to be a 48-hour hangover, because that's just going to toast their CNS and blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you're still getting all your speed work in during the week. And, you could do your speed work, then do your lactate. It's just that the football lactate is so non-specific to the sport. Nobody's ever going to get dizzy from a sprint in a football game, ever. And that's what lactate is. The acidity of lactate causes this nausea and it's not very pleasant. Lactate workouts are absolutely, what's crazy is not only did I not sprint in practice in high school and college, but I don't think I ever had a full lactate acidosis type of thing going on, because we would run our 10 200s in like 27. It was almost aerobic. It pretty much was aerobic, for somebody that's fast. A 27-second 200s like just sucks, but you're just doing it, and then you wait a minute and do it again. But when you run as far as you can in 23 seconds, you're going to feel fine until about 1 minute after there. Then you start you may throw up. Because it is lots of acidity. Mm-hmm. So getting back to football, I would, off season, you take care of three things. Let's say I like to go winter, spring, summer, fall. In winter, you're doing two things: strength and sprinting. That's it. By sprinting, I'm talking about speed workouts and X Factor workouts. By strength, I don't care. Just don't ruin the sprint workouts. That's what I always told the football coach. Don't ruin the sprint workouts. And I said, are you going to crush them on legs? And the football coach would be like, hell yeah, we are. I go, well, don't do that till the last day of the week.
Do it on Friday. Similar to what you said with your lactate workouts. Do it on Friday.
Be smart. He goes, well, I guess I usually like to do it on Monday, but I guess it doesn't matter. Well, it matters to me, coach, because if you did it on Monday, it would ruin 2 or 3 days of my week. So that's what I would do. And then what I would say in the spring is you encourage your guys to run track. The guys not doing it, you continue with X factor speed and then weightlifting. And then the summer, in the art of war, it says that wars are won with speed, power, and misdirection. Well, misdirection to me is like plays and defensive schemes and things like that. The things that football coaches spend a gazillion hours at, and their intelligence on misdirection is just breathtaking. They are the smartest meatheads in the world. So I believe you need to split up 3 ways in the summer. That you're still going to do your speed and X factor. That's your speed part of the art of war. You're still going to do your power stuff. That's your lifting. And then you're going to do football specific stuff. But I don't think, let's talk about the imbalance. Some programs go out and they lift hard and then do 2 hours on the field. 0 speed work. That's like the worst thing in the world. And one of the reasons why it's the worst thing in the world is because speed amplifies misdirection. The faster you are, the better every play is going to look, every defensive. Run a reverse with a slow guy, it's an 8-yard loss. Yeah. Run a reverse with Tyreek Hill, it's a touchdown. Yeah. So I would think that any type of misdirection, and all football is misdirection. That's even if you run right at somebody, you're not giving away the play. And then speed also amplifies power. So the faster you are, the better your weight room numbers are with even less time in the weight room. It's magical what happens. Now, if you overdo it in the weight room, you're not going to be as fast. If you overdo it in misdirection, you're going to be constantly in a state of fatigue and you're never going to get faster. So I think, like if I was working with a team, I would say, first of all, let's don't go 4 hours, 5 hours. Let's shoot for about 45 minutes of speed work, about 45 minutes in the weight room, about 45 minutes of misdirection, implementation of your offense, routes, 7-on-7, all that kind of stuff. And what coaches would say, we can't get it done in 45 minutes. I said, well, then you're too sophisticated. You're trying to accomplish too much. Do less and achieve more by, like if you have to throw out half of your on the field stuff, what half are you going to throw out? The weaker half. The shit. Yeah. That's right. And so we are forcing you to become an essentialist and get better at the things that matter by limiting the time. Your kids, and do 0 conditioning. So your kids, you can go every day doing it like that. I would rather go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so they're super fresh. Your kids will look forward to it. Speed training is like a 0 cost. It's easy. In 45 minutes in the weight room, I don't think you can get real sore in 45 minutes. No. But you can be real quality. You can read that Barry Ross book and learn how to get stronger by doing less, but doing it better and being smarter about it. And so anyway, that's what I would do. And then in season, I believe that you have to once again, never burn the steak. Tired is the enemy, no conditioning. And then you go, I think you separate into high and low days. I like to call them, this is all evolving for me the more I talk about it, but I call them performance days and fundamental days. Yep. So in a high school program, I would suggest performance day Monday. First of all, give your kids the weekend off. Saturday and Sunday, nothing. Let them get up on Saturday and watch game day. Let them be kids. And then they come back on Monday missing football. And so you have a performance day. And what's that? Oh, that's the day we're going to get up to top speed. That's the day we're going to really pay attention to recovery so that we can run every route at top speed. Everything we do is going to be crisp and game-like. And we might have to recover more than 25 seconds in order to do that, but we are going to perform in practice. And then on Tuesday, a fundamental day is basically a traditional football practice minus conditioning. So you do stuff you need to do, tackling, game planning, It's not a walkthrough. It's blocking, tackling, handoffs, ball security, strip drill. I mean, you do just basic fundamental football stuff on those days, but you're thinking, don't burn the steak, don't burn the steak, don't burn the steak, because the next day is going to be a performance day. It's going to be a high day. And then you're going to back off on Thursday. And once again, just go through the fundamentals. It's not really a walkthrough, but it could be. And then you're going to be like an uncaged animal on Friday night. Now, people always want to counter what I say with, wait, Jimmy Radcliffe and Chip Kelly, they were big on a high day the day before a game. I said, that's fine. You can make your high day the day before a game. They're smart people. But you better make damn sure that high day is low volume.
This big. Keep it as small as possible.
I mean, you are constantly trying. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a high school team, one of those rich Catholic schools out in Ohio. God, I can't remember which one it was, but they missed like 250 player games one year.
Jeez.
Yes. I mean, they're a great program. You're like, what are we doing wrong? And so they got a catapult system. And what they found out was that their players were doing more on Thursday than they were doing at any time during the week. Even though practice was only 60% as long, only their number ones were getting reps. So literally they were burning the steak in the pregame, not knowing that they were burning the steak. And when you burn the steak, kids get hurt. And so, yes, if you're going to have a performance day the day before a game, good for you. But let's make sure that you are always erring, making an error by doing less than needed. You have to be uncomfortable with how little you do on that pregame day.
I love it. That is, honestly, I really hope that people don't sleep on the simplicity of that framework that you just outlined, because I think that's a big problem in the coaching world too, is people are scared to do the simple, but you got to do simple savagely well. That's the key to elite level performance, in my humble young opinion.
Eric Corum, who he spoke at TFC twice, and he's on that William and Mary staff. Matter of fact, Kier went to William and Mary because he met Eric Corum at a TFC when they were both speaking. And so, isn't that cool?
That is.
So anyway, Eric Corum, when I first heard about him, had implemented a high-low system, basically Chip Kelly's system, at Kentucky. He was a sports performance guy.
Yep.
And I knew of Eric Corum because he actually had the first prototype of the 1080 Sprint, the $20,000 machine.
Yeah. I know.
Which,
the one that I'll probably never get my hands on. Yeah, I know.
You don't need it. I don't have it. But Chris Korfist was the first American coach to buy one.
Really?
But Eric Corum had the prototype. So I was like, I got to meet this Eric Corum. And then I saw an article where he was like high, low. And anyway, Stoops down there, after they'd won their first two games, he said, Eric, I'm loving this. I'm loving this, man. I'm a little uncomfortable with how little we're doing, but I'm loving this. He goes, but if we ever lose, it's your damn fault. And of course, Eric got fired there.
Yeah.
They lost like their last 4 games one year. He's out. And so he goes to the Houston Texans. And he's a sports performance guy there. And they had the old school O'Brien down there. And Eric told me every time O'Brien would lose a game, he'd double down.
Yeah.
He said, by God, we're going to work twice as hard next week. And so he's out of there. And so anyway.
Corum got fired, and then eventually Bill O'Brien got fired. So it's a high stakes game when you're at that elite level, and they're always looking for someone to point the finger at. And, it starts at the bottom of the totem pole, but eventually it works its way up, and then the top man goes.
And if you're a do less, achieve more guy, if you go as a feed the cats guy, you will be the reason
you're the first one gone every time.
You are on the chopping block with the first loss, because our default says that when we lose, it's because of
we didn't do
lack
enough.
Of toughness, lack of effort, lack of conditioning, and a lack of manliness.
Yeah.
And And that's always our default. It's never the 3 fumbles.
No.
It's never the 6 missed tackles.
No.
It's never that we were a step slow because we worked them too hard this week. It's always, that we need to work harder.
Yeah. And that is a philosophical issue. That is probably not going to get fixed today with this conversation, but guys that are, preaching that message, we'll keep fighting the good fight and see what we can do. And hopefully at one day, that will be a popular belief, is that less is more and better is better.
Yep. Always is.
Always is. Again, I've thanked you a few times, but as a young coach, I really want to thank you for your work on that front. Cause you really, how I think today is certainly not how I thought as an athlete. And it's certainly not how I thought as a first-year coach, a second-year coach, a third-year coach. And then over these last 2 years, the more that I started to learn from guys like yourself and other people that are preaching that similar message, that's what's really pushed me to think differently and evolve as a coach. So again, you're in that list of people that have been highly influential on me. And again, as we're starting to wrap this up, I do want to take that opportunity to thank you, because it's helped me, but most importantly, it's helped athletes. It's helped the people
Butterfly
that I get to
effect,
coach.
Right?
A butterfly effect. You pass it on. Coach, this has been amazing. This is not just as a podcast, but just as a conversation. This has been one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had recently. And I've had some really good podcasts and conversations over the last few weeks. Who is a guest or a few other guests that I should try and have a similar awesome conversations with?
That's one of the best things about what I do now. I'm kind of a talent scout, because of the TFC stuff.
Yeah.
Korfist is still teaching full time. So I get to sit around my office and look for talent. So anyway, Brian Kula is amazing. And I can give you contact information on any of these guys.
Yeah. Much appreciated.
Korfist is, blows people away. Brad Dixon is this guy that coaches at a school of 250 kids, and he's changing the world. He was the first coach to go all in with a Feed the Cats approach. And he tells the story of him messaging me for the first time, say, Coach, can you give me detailed practice plans about what the Feed the Cats week would look like? And I think I replied to him. I said, no, I only teach you how to cook. You have to come up with the recipe yourself. And so he has, and it's not, and he'll tell you the recipe at a school of 250 kids is not the same recipe that maybe you would have at a university. Mm-hmm. But the ways you cook should probably be the same. So anyway, he's fantastic. And another real good friend of mine, I think he's the most brilliant young, I don't think he's 30 yet. He might be the most brilliant coach under 30 in the United States, and that's Dan Casey from St. David's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Dan Casey is probably the best football follow on Twitter. He is just brilliant. I think he has a PhD in divinity from Duke. He's a coach's kid. He called me 3 years ago when he read New Ideas for Old School Football Coaches. And we talked for about an hour and a half. And he has since spoke twice at TFCs. And those guys are really, really good.
That's awesome. And like you said, the first three names I had heard of before, obviously Korfist and Kula and Dixon I'm aware of, and I've seen some of their stuff, but the Dan Casey there, I've actually never heard of him. So I appreciate you putting him on my radar. I'm definitely going to be diving in and looking at what he's doing, because obviously your endorsement speaks a lot to me. So
you know what would be a real fun guy is a guy we got for TFC this year. I knew it. This guy listened to a 3-hour webinar I did, and then he texted me, sent me a text, and I'd never heard of him before. And come to find out, he's Patrick Mahomes' personal trainer.
Oh, wow.
Bobby Stroup is his name. And you talk about a fun guy. And so anyway, he's speaking at TFC this year. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that I'm in contact with the trainer of McCaffrey and Mahomes, as an old retired high school chemistry teacher, is a cool thing about my life. And yeah, he is really, really interesting.
That's awesome. That is so cool. And you've mentioned it a few different times. Track Football Consortium, like, where could people learn more about TFC? How did you guys get started with TFC? Just real quickly, just point people towards the Track Football Consortium. The blog, personally, I can say the blog is a gold mine of great articles. There's a handful of ones that I'm going to link in the show notes here. But tell people a little bit more about TFC and what you guys have going on and how you got to that point.
Chris Korfist and I are friends, and we're very different, and kind of a yin and yang thing. So anyway, but we were eating breakfast one day, and I said, "Are you speaking anywhere this winter?" And he goes, "No." And I'm just shaking my head thinking, here's the most brilliant sprint coach I know. He's not speaking anywhere. And he said, "Are you speaking anywhere?" I go, "No." And I said, I think that if you speak at a clinic, they think that, you're done, like you can't ever go back to that clinic. And he just said, maybe we should start our own clinic. And before we left that day, we came up with the name, the Track Football Activation Consortium. And, because Be Activated was the precursor for RPR.
RPR, yeah.
And we had, we got 50 people to come to our first one. And I think our second one, we had Stuart McMillan and Lateef Thomas and Cal Dietz. And before you know it, we're just putting together something that nobody has ever put together before, where instead of S&C guys going to S&C conferences and football coaches going to football clinics and track coaches going to track clinics, we're learning from diverse ideas. Mm-hmm. And so we've had 14 of them so far. This year, we have 20 recorded presentations plus 20 podcasts. So it's an interesting format, costs $229. You need to get your ticket quick because we say it starts on December 2nd, but really, I think our presentations will all be available by Thanksgiving. So the presentations will be available 24/7 from Thanksgiving to New Year's. And so to find that stuff out, you can always get a hold of me, DM me, whatever. And my platform is Twitter, and that's @PNTrack, like Plainfield North, @PNTrack. And then our consortium Twitter is @TF Consortium, @TF Consortium. And our website is trackfootballconsortium.com, probably the longest website domain ever. But that's what it is. And somehow what's happened with the consortium, and I'm afraid it won't be quite as great being live, but people who come to it get a feeling of belonging, like they're a part of a network, a part of a group of interesting rebel talents, and they become loyal to not only our message, but our mission, which is the multi-sport athlete, kids first, do no harm, think differently. It's okay to try something contrarian, counterintuitive. If it doesn't work, hell, your old stuff probably wasn't working either. So
yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, is there anything else you want to say here before we wrap it up?
The only other thing is that I feel embarrassed promoting this stuff, but Coach Two told me that Hal Mummy made like $100,000 doing his air raid certification courses last year. And they told me to say, hey, Feed the Cats could be the next air raid. So me having enough time on my hand, I've actually produced 8 courses so far in probably a 20 course certification thing. And like my first 2 courses were the speed workout and the X Factor workout, which I think is invaluable. That's pretty much your entire off season. Yep. Speed work, X Factor work. That's your entire speed program. So anyway, you can get a hold of me to find that stuff. And I just think it's good content out there, and it's good because I'm not trying to attract professional athletes. I'm not trying to be complex. I'm trying to teach coaches that don't know jack shit about speed, how to get kids fast, and that's a lot of track coaches too, by the way. They just go out and run their guys. And that's kind of my target audience. But I think that even people who know a lot about speed can appreciate, the discussion at least.
Mm-hmm. And so, sorry, to get involved in that project, just reach out to you directly.
Yeah, or you can go directly to Coach Tube as well.
Okay.
That's where How Mummy stuff is as well.
Okay.
They do a good job, and they're also hosting our TFC this year, so they've been very good to us. Yeah, they're a really good organization.
Okay. And I will, like I said, there's a few things that we've mentioned throughout this episode here. I'm going to do my darndest to link everything in. I've been making, I think I'm on page 7 or 8 of notes since we've been talking here. So I'll go back through and I'll try my absolute best to link everything in.
Cool.
So that everyone that's listening to this right now, it's all consolidated for you to simply find everything all in one spot. Coach, I'd love for you to hang on here after I end this recording, but I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all the work that you've done and sharing that message. I'm someone who's immensely benefited from that. Like I said, we talked about that butterfly effect. Your teachings and your philosophies are through me and through the athletes that I get the opportunity to work with are going to have some pretty profound impacts, and they already have. So thank you so much for your time today and then everything that you've shared.
Well, it's been the best 2 hours of my day, so thank you.
Hey, I'll take that. And we're going to end it right there, guys. Thank you very much for listening.